Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full preview for you of an upcoming Tier 10 Soviet double-barreled heavy tank. It is the ST-II. This vehicle will be arriving in the 1.7.1 update, and the preview that you're seeing today will be from the 1.7.1 test server. So remember, while statistics of these tanks are subject to change, at least we have a fairly good idea of what the final thing will look like. The ST-II has Wargaming's new double-barreled gun mechanic, so you can fire it as a regular vehicle where you fire, you wait for a substantial amount of time, and then you reload. Alternatively, you can reload both barrels of the tank and then fire each barrel in quick succession at different targets, which effectively works like an auto reloader. Or alternatively, you can charge the gun up and fire a double barrel hit, and that will give this tank the highest alpha damage of any heavy tank inside the game. Although, be warned, you are going to be subject to a very substantial reload after that, even with a very good crew. So just before I get stuck in on the battlefield and show you what this thing is like with some gameplay, let's just take a quick look at the statistics of this vehicle and show you how it stacks up to some of its competition, namely the IS-4. So as you'd expect, these two vehicles are very comparable, and that's because the IS-4 leads on from the ST-I, the single-shot tank, while the ST-II actually leads on from the IS-III-II. And as the IS-4 is basically an upgraded version of the ST-I, you'd expect the ST-II to be comparable to the tank, and yes, it is. Both of these vehicles use practically the same 122mm main armament, with the ST-II having a slight rate of fire advantage over the IS-4, reloading in 0.3 seconds less, meaning that if you choose to fire this tank only in single shot mode, then the damage per minute of the vehicle will be 2,353 base with a 100% commander. That's just a touch better than the IS-4. In addition to this, you have 8 degrees of gun depression with the ST-II. That's very welcome and 2 degrees better than the IS-4, but you do have 0.1 worse aim time, and your accuracy is 0.02 worse. Now, unfortunately, TanksGG hasn't updated their statistics, and so I don't know what the gun handling is going to be like on the ST-II, but having played it, feels like it's pretty darn good, as is with the Object 703. At Tier 8 Premium, as Wargaming seem to want to make the gun handling statistics of these new double-barrel tanks excellent, because obviously they're going to have to move their guns while they're charging to deliver a blow, and if they've got bad dispersion values, they're not going to feel very good. Alright, so now we know that the firepower of this tank is practically the same as the IS-4, but it just has a little worse aim time, accuracy, but it does have that double-barrel capacity. One thing you might be interested in is what is the penetration like on this 122mm main armament, and it's standard really, 258mm on its standard rounds, 68 on its high explosive rounds, but really its premium penetration is very lackluster. While it does get heat, its heat penetration is only 310. That's very disappointing, as when we look at the IS-4's 122mm main armament, we can see it's got 340mm of penetration. This kind of means that the new double-barreled tank is going to be a lot like the Object 705, with its lower heat penetration. It's going to be incredibly frustrating when you're wanting to obliterate the front of very thick armor. Think about the mouse cheeks. You're still going to be able to pen them fairly reliably, but not nearly as reliably as 340 will. So if you want to use the double-barrel capacity or even the auto-reloading capacity of the ST-II, well, you're going to have a 5-second intra-clip reload if you want to fire each barrel individually, and if you want to fire a double shot, then you're going to have to charge up the shell for 2.5 seconds before you're able to release it, and then you're going to have a 3-second lockout timer after that. Now, 2.5 seconds charge time to deliver 2 times 440 alpha damage doesn't really feel too much. And really, one of the key things that you'll have to do in this tank is charge up your shot as you're coming around the corner so you can maximize your damage per minute. Because obviously, if you're able to fully charge up the shell and as you come around the corner, then you're not losing any DPM. And to be able to deliver 880 damage and then only to have a 3-second lockout before you start reloading the guns one by one every 11.7 seconds, doesn't feel too bad. So now you know all about the firepower of these tanks. Let's take a look at the survivability. Well, the ST-II has the same hit points, 2,500, very nice. Its frontal hull armor is 150, which is 10mm better than the IS-4, but its side armor is 140, which is 20mm worse than the IS-4. So if you're expecting to be able to over-angle this tank, you're going to be a bit disappointed. I didn't really feel that the lower plate on this vehicle was very good either. I was easily able to penetrate it, as we're going to be seeing in the gameplay in just a minute with standard rounds. But its turret armor at 300mm at the front and 160 at the side, it's a bit of a funny one, because when we think about it, that while the front is decent, the side, whenever you have to try and engage your opponents there, it's incredibly weak. And the way that the turret is angled along here means that it's very easy to penetrate the side of the turret of the ST-II, so definitely take that to your advantage. Also, this thing has a bit of a flat weak point up here, although I felt that I needed heat rounds to be able to reliably go through this, so I think that it is incredibly thick. I think it's probably about 300mm thick, or maybe even 280. We won't know for certain until we have a 3D model of this tank, but most of my standard rounds of about 250, 260mm pen were not reliably going through this, and I needed heat before I started to go through it often. So all in all, I feel like the ST-II will be a very solid tank, especially considering it uses 8 degrees of gun depression. You should be able to not have to expose your lower plate as much and hopefully be able to hide it behind a ridge line. It's a solid tank, but is it some incredible apocalypse tank with godlike armor? No, it's really not. Alright, so now onto the mobility of the vehicle. The tank weighs just shy of 70 tons, 10 tons heavier than the IS-4. I guess that's because of that double barrel and all the mechanism attached to it. It has a decent power to weight ratio of 12.12, practically the same as the IS-4, and its top speed and its reverse speed is just a little bit worse than the standard single-shot Soviet heavy tank at 40 forwards and 13 backwards, and its traverse speed is identical. Yeah, wow, I think you can see just how similar these tanks are. Concealment rating, identical as the IS-4, although it does have 10 meters less view range, 390. Well, that's not going to be a big deal, as you can't use a gun rammer on this tank, so you're probably going to be taking coated optics instead. That obviously means that the damage per minute of this vehicle will drop behind the IS-4, as the IS-4 is able to use a large caliber tank gun rammer. And so now that you know everything that you need to know statistically about the ST-II, let's see how the tank performs on the battlefield. So here we go, we're rolling out on Erlenberg encounter, and where am I going to take the vehicle? Right into the thick of it. I think that's where this vehicle is going to be best, up close and personal. Doesn't have the best accuracy, doesn't have the best aim time, but if you're close to your opponents, your accuracy doesn't really matter, and your aim time, you can account for it, right? So immediately, 2 barrels loaded. How do you make use of this if you're watching double barrel tanks for the first time? Well, I've actually decided to rebind one of the keys. If you go into if you press your escape, you go to settings, you can go to controls, and there's actually a whole new button for fire a salvo. Now by default this is actually on your left mouse button. I found this to be actually quite awkward, because it means that if you let go of charging up a double shot and then you click your mouse button to fire a single shot, there can actually be a delay. So one thing that I've done is I've actually rebounded onto a key. I've rebounded onto my C key for me personally, and there you go, double barrel shot, 869 alpha damage, the highest alpha damage possible now on any heavy tank with decent penetration. We're not talking about high explosive rounds here. So I thought that maybe I could slinky in behind the T10 E4. Wasn't able to do so. I was using some of the wreckage there, or what should I say, of the crates, to be able to hopefully absorb some of the heat rounds from the enemy. But now I'm going to try and turn my attention to the other ST-II in front of me. So trying to charge the double barrel as we come out. So back to talking about why I've decided to take it off middle mouse, sorry, not off middle mouse button, why I've decided to take it off my mouse buttons. Bit of a misplay there. I probably could have fired a single shot rather than a double shot, easily. And this is actually bad DPM when I think about it. Could have easily fired a single there off into the ST-II, and you should only probably go for doubles when you think that you're actually going to be able to land the double. So right now I'm just going for singles. I'm going to show you just how trash the lower plate is of this thing. You're able to go through it super easily. 150mm isn't going to protect you. And I just realized, oh my lord, I had loads of tanks able to hit me in the left. Good thing they didn't manage to catch me there. Double barrel! Whoa! We only penetrate 1. Now why did we only penetrate 1? Well, we only penetrate 1 because one of them went into the ridgeline. You've always got to think about which barrel you're shooting out of, and you can see which barrel you're shooting out of in the center of your screen here. That means I'm shooting out of my right barrel. If this ring was around the left one, that would mean I'd be shooting out of my left barrel. So don't make the same mistakes that I make. Do as I say, not as I do, right? Okay, so hopefully we're going to manage to get one more shot into the 60 TP here. Not quite able to find the shell. Looking for another one, maybe into the IS-4 who's out there. And I think, why don't I just shoot that guy? Yes! Double through the side. Low rolls though, 790 damage. But do you see how quickly this thing clocks up damage? It's really crazy. It's a bit like an E100 or a 60 TP, for example. And those things have got 750 damage. This thing's got 880 if it lands its double shots. And then it doesn't feel like it has that much of a reload, right? Okay, ready to do it again. Let's see if we can manage to get this guy. But I put them through the side of the turret, at least I try to. One penetrates, one doesn't. So, yeah, another 392, still not that bad of a result. Now we've loaded a single shot in. We'll be able to land it off into the ST-II. No, we won't, so we're going to go and try and turn our attention to maybe the Jagdpanzers over here. And this is what's lovely about this tank. Sometimes you don't need 750 alpha, sometimes you don't need 800 alpha, so why not just fire a single one? And that's really where this tank is super powerful compared to something like an E100 or a 60 TP. The fact that you can deliver those alpha damage bombs. Oh, are we going to double? No, we're just going to single. The fact, we also killed his driver at the same time. The fact that you can deliver those alpha damage bombs, but also finish off low health tanks, is where this tank becomes powerful. I just wonder though, statistically, the IS-4, no one would ever think that the IS-4 is the most competitive tank, right? Do you think that the statistics of the ST-II are enough? So nice. Do you see how I was actually charging off a double there, and then I released, and because I'd rebound the double fire key onto away from my mouse button, I was able to survive there. Well, I was actually not able to survive. I was able to get an extra shot. All right, so now showing you about the weak point on top. I'm firing standard ammunition for now. We bounce our first shell off the weak point off top. Are we going to be able to find a second shot on this ST-II? Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Okay, that time we actually missed the weak point. We hit the top bar, but as you can see, it's not the easiest thing to be able to hit. Going to go for another one, and that time we hit it flush, and it didn't do any damage. So now I've double tapped the 2 key. We're going to reload our premium rounds, and now we're going to see how strong the weak point on top is against the premium rounds. Well, I'll actually have to hit the weak point for it to be a good test, right? So up to 5,000 damage here. The only rounds that have hit me have been premium, but that's understandable as we are playing on a test server and everybody wants to test just how good the gold rounds are, right? Yeah, not very useful on a test server. It's always a little bit frustrating. That's why I try to fire as much standard ammunition I can against all of the ST-II, so it's probably actually your best bet to be able to find out how the tank is able to work. So back to what I was actually saying, and oh god, there's an FV215B183, but luckily he misses me, and I'm going to go back, try and get a double shot, unable to do that. So back what I was saying, I'm still not sure about this tank, about whether it's going to be... I think it's going to be good. I think the fact that it can fire doubles is going to be incredible. But I just wonder if other heavy tanks are going to be just as competitive. And I guess they should be, right? Because that surely means that it's balanced. No one's going to claim that the IS-4 is the most competitive tank. And considering that the statistics of this tank are very similar to the IS-4, I'm a little bit concerned. And oh, there's one in for him. And then we don't even need the double barrel now. Now we can just fire a nice single right through the side of the turret. And there you go, 5,700 damage. I will take that. How quickly does this thing deal damage like that, though, right? To have that 5-second reload, and then to be able to reload all of the damage and store up the rounds afterwards, that's incredibly powerful. And so I guess the jury's out. It's definitely going to take me some games on the live server before I have what I would call a full review of this vehicle, before I have that entire opinion. I just don't think it's going to be incredible, but I think it's going to be a strong tank. And there you go. Finish off the Object 430U at the end of the game. Nice result. 6,000 damage. Strong game for the ST-II. So now we find ourselves on Siegfried line, and I'm about to make some incredible mistakes here, boys and girls. I went to, like a fly to the light there, or a moth to the flame, going after the GWE 100, who luckily manages to get shut down. And now I'm going to end up in possibly one of the most stupid, awkward situations ever. The tank just isn't fast enough to do this, but oh, double 902. Oh yeah, not too bad. But this leopard, he's above me. I'm thinking he can't do that. Surely that leopard can't continue to do that. And yeah, this isn't where you want to be. I'm trying to angle my armor towards the heavy tanks, and this blooming leopard just keeps popping up. There's an FV4005 there. Will this FV405 shoot the leopard, who's literally out in the open? Doesn't look like he's going to. But we're going to hopefully manage to dig in here. That leopard just turning around gets me again. I was actually charging a double, but then I release and fire a single. I 100% recommend to rebind your keys. I've actually got it on a mouse button. I've got it on a mouse button on the side on my scimitar mouse that I use from Corsair. Should probably do like a whole hardware thing when I think about it. Anyway, we bounce off the 100. Going to prep the double, and boom. And that just... Oh, 908! Just absolutely disgusting, right? How disgusting is that? It's absolutely filthy when I think about it, how much power that is. And even though I've played like a complete potato this game, even though I've played like an absolute and utter potato this game, and the end surely is in sight as this T-62A is rushing towards us. Here we go. One final blow. Another 905 damage. And look at this. 2 minutes into the game. I die. But we've done 3,200 damage. Just how powerful is that double shot capacity? So there you have it. Play like a donkey, get mauled by a leopard who should have never have been able to sit above me on the ridgeline. But when you're able to hit for 880 on average, trust me, it really doesn't take too many hits before you're starting to really clock up the damage in this tank. So our game on Erlenberg was a first class for the 6,000 damage that we dealt, 1,320 blocked. We hit all of our shells apart from one, and I guess that was the one that we fired into the ridgeline, and we still made a profit even after resupplying consumables at full price, which you should never do, because hopefully you're buying them when they're at a 50% discount. So all in all, this tank, I think my opinion now is that, sure, the statistics of this vehicle seem similar to the IS-4, but it's an IS-4 that can also be an auto-reloader. That just provides it with so much more flexibility. Include the 8 degrees of gun depression that this tank has, and the fact that it can save up its alpha damage and fire them off in a double barrel shot to be able to outtrade its opponents. Yeah, this thing is going to be good. Is it likely to be 10 out of 10 broken though? I might be wrong, but at least my gut instinct right now is that it's going to be a strong tank, but I can't see it having like an Object 268 version 4 impact on the game. But remember, this is just the first iteration of the test server. Wargaming usually have 2 or 3 iterations where they sometimes balance the tanks in each of them, and so we'll just have to wait and see what they have planned. If they don't touch the tank, I think it's worth a pickup. I wouldn't drop everything that I'm doing inside World of Tanks and grinding my way to be able to get this vehicle. But if you haven't experienced double barrel tanks, yeah, I think you owe it to yourself to at least get ready in the KV-3, get that 51,300 experience that you need, unlock the 100mm gun on the tank, and then you'll have the IS-II on day one. Try that tank out, see if you like it. If it's not your thing, then don't bother, because it's a good vehicle at tier 8, and I don't think that the tier 9 and tier 10 are going to be all that much better or provide revolutionary gameplay changes that will mean that you suddenly like these tanks if you didn't like the first one. Nevertheless, I'm personally really looking forward to getting the ST-II. Just to be able to have that double barrel gameplay just provides it's of so much more interest to me. As an experienced player who's always trying to use the tools of the tank to be able to outplay my opponents, if you give me tools like having an auto reloader or even having just a double barrel capacity on the vehicle, then that just gives you so much more opportunity to be able to make those outplays. And this tank as well, with the 8 degrees of gun depression, it's a very flexible tank. I'm thinking I'm going to be liking this one. But on the other hand, I have to admit, I might be just a little bit disappointed about this vehicle, but only a tiny little bit. The 440 alpha damage doesn't exactly feel like it's excessive for a tier 10 tank. There are tier 10 tanks that have 650 alpha damage, 750 alpha damage. Most tier 10 tanks have probably got about 490 alpha damage if they're a heavy, and they have to be something like a Super Conqueror to dip down to the 400 mark. So that means that when you do prep the double barrel, 880 to have then the shell lockout timer doesn't feel that much more substantial than maybe the 750 on the E100 or the 750 on the 60 TP. But I think it's probably for the best to make sure that this tank is still balanced. It would have been absolutely wild if it had something like 490 alpha damage and you were able to deliver a 980 shell. But we'll just have to wait and see to see what Wargaming have planned, right? It could still happen. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was my preview of the ST-II coming in the 1.7.1 update. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about the ST-II. Do you hate the double barrel capacity? Do you think the tank looks absolutely awful? Or do you think the tank looks absolutely incredible? And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, you want to see Czechoslovakian autoloaders? I'll give you Czechoslovakian autoloaders. Come along right now as I work my way up towards the TVP T50/51, playing every single tank down the Czechoslovakian medium tank tech tree, so you can see if it's a line that's worth grinding, or alternatively, if you already have the tanks, you can pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. I really like these autoloaders. I'm looking forward to it. It's always a treat, especially when we reach tier 9 and tier 10, capable of doing some insane damage as well as being very flexible on a ridgeline with those 8 degrees of gun depression, a lot like the ST-II, right? So anyway, really looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.